on the night this happened started just as dull. I wiped down the counters, locked up, and headed for home. My route is nothing but a maze of twisting back roads, flanked by dark woods and open farmland. Traffic is rare, street lights rarer, and usually the drive is peaceful, a good time to let my mind wander. That night, though, a thick fog had settled in, thicker than I'd seen in years. My brights only made it worse, turning the road ahead into a glowing white wall. I slowed down, frustrated that my trip would take longer. Halfway home, something caught my eye, a dim yellow blinking light just off to the right. At first, I thought it was a roadside reflector, but it didn't move closer or fade away. It seemed to match my speed exactly, pacing me from somewhere in the fog. My depth perception felt scrambled, and unease crept in. When I slowed nearly to a crawl, it stayed right there. I stopped entirely, and so did the light. That was when it started to change, each blink glowing brighter. Like a flame suddenly fed more oxygen. I decided I was done. I went to throw the car in reverse, but the engine was silent, dead. I hadn't touched the key. My stomach turned cold. I twisted the ignition over and over, nothing. Meanwhile, the yellow light swelled with every blink. Instinct told me it wasn't just up there. It was connected to me. My phone was my next thought. I pulled it out, tapped the screen. Black. I had checked it back at the bar and had plenty of battery. But now it was completely dead. Before I could think of a plan, the light exploded into brilliance, so bright it burned behind my eyelids. I shielded my face, heart pounding, until the glow vanished entirely. When I dared to look again, it was gone. Just me, the fog, and silence. The engine roared to life like nothing had happened. I drove the rest of the way home with tunnel vision on the road. I've told the story dozens of times since no one's theory has ever made sense to me. A couple of years later, something else happened, this time while I was on a delivery run. I'm a long-haul truck driver now, used to empty highways and dark nights. That night, I was pushing through the second-to-last leg of my route, crossing a desert stretch where there's nothing for miles. That's when I noticed an SUV in my mirror. It wasn't tailgating, kept a steady gap, but no matter how I adjusted my speed, it stayed with me. For miles, I pulled into a small and lit rest stop to stretch and, hopefully, let them pass. But they followed, parking way in the corner. My frustration boiled over, and I headed toward them. Before I got close, they tore out of the lot, gravel spraying, vanishing back into the night. Relieved but unsettled, I decided to nap in the cab. Before driving on, I locked up, cracked the window, and was out within minutes. Sometime later, the faint crunch of gravel woke me to figures crouched by my trailer's latch. One holding a flashlight, the other pulling bolt cutters from a bag. I slammed my palm on the air horn. They bolted for the brush, and an unlit SUV roared past before vanishing again. Police later confirmed fresh pry marks on the trailer door. Cargo thieves. They'd likely been tailing me for hours, waiting for me to stop. One more story, this. Once different. It was summer, and I was out late in my dad's BMW, enjoying the empty roads. I veered off the highway onto some winding back streets, wanting to feel the car grip through tight turns. That's when I saw it, a shopping cart sitting dead center in the road. My headlights caught it at the last second, and I swerved to avoid. It was empty, just there against my better judgment. I got out to look. The night air was warm and still. My car ticked as it cooled behind me. I was turning back toward it when movement caught my eye, two figures sprinting from the darkness of a nearby field straight toward me. I dove into the driver's seat, started the engine. and one of them slammed into the passenger door so hard the car shook. His eyes were wild, bloodshot, clothes torn, skin smeared with something dark. He grabbed for the handle. I floored it, weaving round the cart and tearing off into the night. Later, at home, I saw the side of the BMW streaked with blood more than should have been possible from such a brief hit. There was a dent, too. My dad was furious until I explained. I never heard from the police, and I never drove those back roads at night again. Story to this happened a couple years back. I'm a long-haul truck driver. I've been doing this for years now, so I've gotten pretty used to the long stretches of nothing. This particular night, I was on my second to last delivery of a cross-state loop, just trying to knock it out so I could get home. The route had me cutting through one of those desert highways that barely get any traffic at night. No towns for miles, no gas stations, barely even any lights, just a two-lane road slicing through open desert under a sky full of stars. It's the kind of drive where you start to feel like you're the only person left on the planet. I was. About an hour out from my next drop-off when I first noticed it, I glanced into one of my side mirrors and was kind of surprised to notice a dark SUV back there trailing. It wasn't riding my bumper or anything aggressive like that. It was actually keeping a pretty wide distance, but it was definitely following. No matter how fast or slow I went, it adjusted to match for nearly m. It just hovered there in my mirrors, always visible, always keeping that same strange gap. He never tried to speed loop or pass. Just sat back there like he was waiting for something dotted. First, I thought it was a driver who was afraid to pass me. Maybe they thought it was illegal or dangerous. Beauty cast that theory aside after driving through several passing zones. I guess it was possible they didn't know what a passing zone was, but I figured that was pretty implausible. As much as I was dying to know what was going on, I had a job to do. I couldn't afford to devote a whole night to figuring out what the guy behind him's problem was, so I tried to ignore him as much as I tried. I couldn't help but glance at this car every so often. It was really starting to make me tick. Which is something I rarely ever do. Round a m. I decided to pull off at a small roadside rest area. It wasn't a full truck stop or anything like that. Just a dirt lot with a few faded parking spaces and a little shed with a couple of vending machines. There were also no external lights in the whole lot, except for one dim bulb flickering above the vending machines. I figured I'd stretch my legs for a minute, grab a soda, and more importantly, let whoever was behind me pass. But when I glanced back before shutting off the engine, I saw that Sov pull in too, parking way off in the far corner of the lot. At that point, whatever confusion or discomfort I was feeling became pure rage. Whoever was driving that SUV was about to get a piece of my mind. I aggressively stepped down from the cab and started making my way over to the car, not even trying to disguise my frustration, but as I was stomping my way over there, whoever was inside must have realized that I was about to confront them, because before I could even get close, the SUV's engine suddenly flared to life, and they peeled out of the spot like they were running from the cops, kicking up a huge cloud of dust and gravel. As they sped past me, I tried to catch a glimpse of their Jack, of who was behind the wheel, but windows were tinted and I couldn't make anything out. I watched as the car got back on the highway, tires still screeching. Within seconds, it was gone. Just a flicker of red taillights that quickly receded into nothingness. Part of me was relieved. I wouldn't have had to deal with that nuisance anymore, and he could finally go about my night in peace. But another part of me was deeply unsettled. I had basically confirmed to myself that whoever was driving that car had been following me for some unknown reason. And what's worse, they clearly didn't want me approaching their vehicle. So, their intentions must have been hostile. As I was returning from vending machines, why coincidentally were completely stocked, so that had been a huge waste of time. I only then realized how dread the whole encounter made me. My energy was zapped, and the last thing I wanted to do was get back on the road. I figured I'd earned at least a short break after all that. Just a quick nap. An hour or two to recharge before finishing the route in the morning. He did a quick walk round the rig. I'm a dash of the cargo doors were still. Locket and everything was secured tight. Then climbed back into the cab. I reclined my seat, cracked the window slightly to let some air in, and settled in for a bit of rest. The lot was dead quiet by that point, and for the first time all night, I actually started to relax. My logic was that even if that person did may harm, there's no way they turn their vehicle round just to continue harassing me. Even if they did want to come back, finding the lot again would be next to impossible. They'd have to search blindly in the middle of a pitch-black desert. The combination of my exhaustion and newfound comfort made me falling asleep really easy. If I had to guess, I'd say I fell asleep that night in a matter of minutes. I should probably mention that I'm a really light sleeper. Like really light. You kind of have to be in this line of work. Sleeping in sketchy roadside places soon builds a third eye, so to speak. If someone's messing with your rig while you were asleep, your entire livelihood could be at risk, not to mention your life. So, yeah, the ability to wake up to even faint sounds could be the difference between job and no job. Life and death, maybe an hour after falling asleep. You guessed it. I was woken up by the faintest little noise, a light crunching sound like footsteps pressing into the loose gravel. Even though I was still groggy, I had enough sense to keep quiet. I cracked the corner of one of my window blinds to take a look outside, and sure enough, there were two figures standing near the rear wheels of my trailer. They were crouched down low, inspecting the low latch mechanisms like they were trying to figure out how to open them without making too much noise. They were keeping pretty quiet, but I noticed one of them had a small flashlight, using it to signal back and forth to the other. I couldn't make out any faces, but it was clear as day what they were doing. I didn't have any weapon on me. I usually don't, but if it came down to it, I was fully prepared to defend my rig and load. That's my life. As I watched, one of the guys reached into a small bag and pulled out what looked like a pair of bolt cutters. That was it. Without even thinking, I slammed my palm down on the horn, sending the trick's air horn blaring. Their reaction was instant. Both men jumped like they'd been hit with a lightning bolt, and they scrambled back towards the roadside brush. Not even seconds later, I saw headlights appear out of nowhere. It was that same sub from earlier, this time roaring back into view, its lights still off before whipping round and disappearing into the night again. I never even had time to step out of my cab before the whole thing was over. After things calmed down a bit, I called the police. Honestly, I was mostly just calling to report the incident and get it on record. But they insisted I stay put until a unit could get there to check things out. It took a while. But eventually, 2 officers showed up and helped me inspect the truck. Surely now, there were fresh pry marks along any of the low lock arms on the back of my trailer, right where those guys had been messing around. Fortunately, they hadn't gotten it open. The officers told me they'd seen this kind of thing before. Cargo thieves, apparently. It's a lot more common along that corridor than most people realize. They figured this UV had been following me for a while, waiting for the right time to strike. This remains the most unsettling thing that has ever happened to me. Story 3: there's nothing better than a night drive, especially in the summer. Picture this: the warm summer breeze flowing through the open windows of a speeding car cutting through empty stretches of endless highway. Well, That's what it's like round my neck of the woods. Anyway, there aren't a lot of cars out on the highway at night. No cops either, so you essentially have free rein to drive how you please, and trust me, I take full advantage of that. My dad's BMW definitely assists in that regard. 2. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a reckless driver or someone who operates a car at criminal speeds. But I do enjoy experiencing the full capabilities of common engineering from time to time. This night was one of those times. I was full-on joyriding, cruising along the highway without a care in the world. Stereo turned off and passenger seat empty. My ears were focused not on music, but into other things, the beautiful sounds of my car and the whip of the air around my face. Driving like this is the only things that makes me feel truly free. I'm not sure what came over me, but at one point I had this insatiable urge to pull off the highway and cut up some back roads where I could really appreciate the car's handling. It's like when you get a really strong urge to do something and you don't really know why, but you do know that you won't be able to sleep at night if you don't satisfy it. That's exactly what it was like. So, I did exactly that. I pulled off at the next exit and started cutting through a network of back roads, weaving through whatever neighborhood I had landed in. The roads were narrow and filled with tight bends. Exactly the kind of driving I was looking for. I let the car open up a bit, taking the turns with just enough speed to feel the tires grip and release. The streets were completely deserted. It was just me, the car, and the road. That is until I spotted a flicker of light in the road up ahead and slammed on the brakes just into to barely avoid smashing into it. Once I came to a stop, I finally got a clear look at what I had almost hit. It was a shopping cart just sitting there in the middle of the road like someone had wheeled it out and left it. The way my headlights bounced off the metal bars must have been what caught my eye and made it look a lot more sudden and dramatic than it really was. Still, it completely threw me off. I mean, it's not exactly normal to find a random shopping cart sitting dead center in the middle of the back road at close time night, against my better judgment. I put the car in park, turned on my hazards, and stepped out to take a closer look. I probably should have just kept driving, but my curiosity got the better of me. The whole thing just felt so random and out of place that I had this weird need to make sense of it. The night air hit me right away, warm but a little buggy, and the only sound was my cooling engine making the classic bun-ticking sound. I walked up to the cart, and sure of what I'd find inside. Groceries, maybe. No, that was ridiculous. I internally scolded myself for letting such a dumb thought ever enter my brain. I peered inside the cart and realized it was completely empty. Just an ordinary metal shopping cart sitting in the middle of the road. It stood there for a few seconds, but when it became clear there was nothing unusual about the cart itself, I turned to head back toward my car. That's when I saw out of the corner of my eye two dark figures suddenly broke out from their farmland beside the road. They were sprinting full speed coming straight toward me. It took my brain a second to even process what I was seeing. But in that moment, it was life or death. My options were either act or die. I bolted back to my car and basically punched the start button. The car came to life as those figures made it to my car window. One of them stopped a few feet from my car, but the other one sprinted directly into my passenger side door, coming to a halt with a deafening thump. He didn't even flinch. It was as if my car were invisible. That's how fast he had been running. He didn't even brace himself for the impact. The two of us locked eyes, and all the confidence I just had was instantly gone. I was frozen. He stared at me with terbidi, bloodshot eyes. His clothes were torn like he'd been running through thick brush or barbed wire, and his hair was messy and wet. His face was smeared with something dark. dirt. All blood, or maybe both. Had this unsettling,